Chapter 1. The Wolf in the Ravine. The storm came down like judgment. Ilara Voss fought the wheel of her battered pickup, knuckles white against the slick leather, as the windshield wipers slashed uselessly at the blizzard. The road, if the rutted logging track could be called that, had vanished beneath a foot of fresh powder, and the pines crowding the narrow pass pressed in like conspirators. She'd left Blackthorn Hollow at dusk, chasing the last sliver of daylight and the promise of solitude. 3 hours later, the sky had cracked open, and the forest had swallowed her whole. She should have turned back at the first warning gust, should have ignored the ache in her chest that whispered run, run, run every time she thought of the letter still folded in her coat pocket. But Ilara had never been good at should-haves. Lightning forked across the sky, illuminating the ravine yawning to her left. For a heartbeat, the world went white, then black again. The afterimage burned behind her eyelids. Something moved down there. A shadow, too large for a deer, too deliberate for a bear. Her foot slipped off the gas. The truck lurched, tires spinning on ice. "Damn it!" she hissed, wrestling the vehicle back onto the track. The engine growled in protest. Another flash of lightning, this one closer, and the shadow resolved into a shape that stole the breath from her lungs. Man naked, bleeding, sprawled, in the snow like a broken god. Ilara slammed on the brakes. The truck bisected, rear end swinging wide before grinding to a stop. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she shoved the door open and stumbled out into the gale. The cold hit her like a slap, sharp enough to sting tears from her eyes. She yanked her scarf higher over her mouth and plunged down the embankment, boots slipping on loose shale. He wasn't moving. She dropped to her knees beside him, breath fogging in frantic puffs. Blood soaked the snow beneath his torso, dark, arterial, too much. His skin was marble pale, lips blue, but his chest rose and fell in shallow, stubborn increments. A lattice of gashes crisscrossed his ribs, deep enough to glimpse bone. Claw marks. She'd seen enough hunting accidents to know the difference. Hey, can you hear me?" She pressed 2 fingers to his throat. Pulse strong, steady, impossible. "You're going to freeze." His lashes fluttered. Gold. His eyes were gold, pupils blown wide, reflecting the storm like twin moons. For a moment she forgot the cold, the blood, the letter burning a hole in her pocket. Then his gaze sharpened, pinning her in place, and a low sound rumbled from his chest, too deep for a human throat. Ilara jerked back, nearly tumbling into the snow. The sound wasn't pain. It was recognition. She shook her head, shoving the thought away. Hypothermia. Shock. She was losing it. "Can you stand?" she shouted over the wind. "I've got a truck. Come on, we have to move." He didn't answer, just stared, unblinking, as if cataloging every inch of her face. Then slowly, agonizingly, he pushed up on one arm. Muscles bunched beneath skin latticed with scars, old and new. The movement should have torn him apart. Instead, the gashes knit together before her eyes, edges sealing with a faint shimmer of heat that melted the snow around him. Ilara's stomach lurched. What the hell? A howl split the night, not wind, not imagination. A wolf's cry, raw and triumphant, echoing from the ridge above. Another answered from the east. Then a third closer. Too close. The man's head snapped toward the sound. His lips peeled back from teeth too sharp, a growl vibrating in his chest that made the ground tremble beneath her knees. When he turned back to her, the gold in his eyes had swallowed the white. "Run!" he rasped. The single word cracked like a whip. Ilara didn't think. She grabbed his arm. God, he was hot, fever hot, and hauled him upright. He swayed but didn't fall. Together they staggered up the ravine, her boots skidding, his bare feet leaving bloody prints that steamed in the snow. The howls grew louder, a chorus closing in. She shoved him into the passenger seat and slammed the door. The truck's cab smelled of pine needles, gun oil, and now blood. Lots of it. She threw herself behind the wheel, keyed the ignition. The engine coughed, caught, roared. She floored it, tires spinning before biting into the ice. In the rearview mirror, shapes moved between the trees, low, sleek, eyes catching the headlights like reflectors, wolves, bigger than any she'd seen. And they were running! "Seatbelt!" she barked, swerving around a fallen log. The truck bisected again, but she wrestled it straight. "Who are you?" He didn't answer, just braced one hand against the dash, the other pressed to his side where blood still seeped through his fingers. His breathing was ragged, but the gold in his eyes hadn't faded. If anything, it burned brighter. "Name," she demanded, voice shaking. "Give me a name," a pause. Then so low she almost missed it. "Cale." "Cale what?" Another howl, this one right behind them. The truck's back window exploded in a spray of glass. Alara screamed, ducking as something heavy slammed into the tailgate. Cale twisted in his seat, a snarl ripping from his throat that didn't sound human at all. His hand shot out, fingers splayed against the shattered window. The air shimmered, and the pursuing shadow yelped, tumbling into the snow. Alara didn't look back. She crested the ridge, tires screeching, and the logging road widened into the clearing where her grandfather's old cabin crouched beneath a stand of ancient hemlocks. She skidded to a stop, killed the engine, and bolted around to Cale's side. He was already out, leaning heavily against the truck, blood dripping from his fingertips to hiss in the snow. The gashes on his chest had closed to angry red lines. Impossible. All of it. "Inside," she panted, slinging his arm over her shoulder. He was heavy, solid muscle, no fat, but he moved with her, each step deliberate despite the pain etching his face. The door stuck, swollen from the damp. She kicked it open and hauled him through. The cabin was dark, cold, smelling of dust and old wood smoke. She dumped him on the cot by the fireplace and slammed the door shut, throwing the bolt. Her hands shook as she fumbled with the kerosene lantern. Light bloomed, casting long shadows across the single room. Cale watched her, gold eyes tracking every movement. The firelight caught on something at his throat. A pendant. Black stone shot through with silver veins, hanging from a leather cord. It pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. Alara's own heart stuttered. She'd seen that symbol before, carved into the standing stones at the edge of the hollow, in her mother's forbidden sketchbook. The mark of the old Pax. "You're not human," she whispered. His lips curved. Not quite a smile. No, outside the wolves began to circle. Chapter 2. The stranger at the door, the storm had teeth. It gnawed at the cabin's eaves, rattled the single-pane windows, and hurled sleet like buckshot against the cedar shingles. Alara Voss stood over the sink, wrists raw from scrubbing blood from Cale's torn shirt, the metallic scent clinging to her fingertips no matter how hard she scoured. The fire she'd coaxed to life an hour ago spat and hissed, throwing long shadows across the pine plank floor. Outside, the wind screamed through the hollow like a living thing. Grief-struck, furious, and ancient. She shouldn't have brought him here. The thought circled her mind like a wolf at the edge of a campfire. She'd found him half buried in snow, shirt shredded, gashes across his chest already knitting themselves shut with impossible speed. No man should survive that. No man should heal like that. Yet here he was, unconscious on her narrow cot until moments ago, breathing slow and steady, the firelight gilding the sharp angles of his face. Alara dried her hands on a threadbare towel and approached him warily. His lashes, thick, dark, unfairly long, fluttered against his cheeks. A bruise bloomed along his jaw, purple fading to yellow at the edges. She'd seen bruises like that before. On her own skin. On her mother's. On the men her father had disciplined when the Pack's rules were broken. She shoved the memory down. Hard. Cale's lips parted. A low sound rumbled from his chest. Not quite a groan, not quite a growl. The hairs on her arms lifted. She'd grown up on the outskirts of Blackthorn Hollow, close enough to the forest to hear the howls on full moon nights, far enough that the townsfolk pretended the stories were just that, stories. But Alara had seen the eyes in the dark, had felt the weight of something watching from the tree line when she was 12, gathering kindling with her mother, had watched her mother's face go pale when the Alpha's enforcers came to collect the tithe. She knew better. Cale's eyes snapped open. Alara stumbled back, her spine hitting the counter. His gaze was molten gold, pupils blown wide, reflecting the fire like a predator's. For a heartbeat, she couldn't breathe. Then he blinked, and the color bled away, leaving behind a storm gray so deep it looked bruised. "You're awake," she said, voice steadier than she felt. "Don't move. You'll tear the stitches." He didn't speak, just watched her. head tilted as if listening to something she couldn't hear. The silence stretched, thick with the crackle of burning pine and the relentless drum of sleet on the roof. "I'm Alara." She tried again. "This is my cabin. You were hurt. Badly. I found you in the ravine." His gaze flicked to the bandage wrapped around his ribs, then to the blood-stained shirt draped over the chair. Something flickered across his face, too fast to name. Pain? Recognition? He pushed up on one elbow, muscles cording beneath the skin of his forearm. The movement was fluid, predatory. The cot creaked in protest. "Lie down!" she snapped, stepping forward. "You'll rip yourself open." A huff of air escaped him, almost a laugh. Already healing. His voice was gravel and smoke, low enough to vibrate in her sternum. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. As if he'd expected it. As if he expected it. Alara's pulse skittered. "That's not possible." Cale's mouth twitched, the ghost of a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You saw it happen. She had. In the ravine, under the lightning's strobe. She'd watched his skin knit together like time-lapse film. She opened her mouth, closed it. Words felt clumsy, inadequate. Instead, she busied herself with the kettle, filling it from the jug by the door. Her hands shook as she set it on the camp stove. The mundane task grounded her, if only for a moment. "You're not human," she said again, quieter this time. Not a question. "No." He leaned back against the wall, wincing as the movement pulled at his side. "But I'm not your enemy." The kettle began to whistle. Alara flinched. She poured steaming water into a chipped mug, added a pinch of willow bark and chamomile, her mother's remedy for pain. She hesitated, then carried it to him. "Drink. It'll help." Cale took the mug, fingers brushing hers. His skin was fever-hot, calloused, the touch sending a jolt up her arm that she refused to acknowledge. He sniffed the tea, raised a brow. "You poison all your guests?" "Only the ones who bleed on my floors." She crossed her arms, leaning against the table to put distance between them. "Start talking, Cale. Who were those wolves? Why were they after you?" His jaw tightened. The pendant at his throat caught the firelight again, the black stone pulsing faintly. "Old debts. That's not an answer. It's the only one you get tonight." He sipped the tea, grimaced but drank again. "You shouldn't have brought me here, Alara." "Yeah, well, I'm full of bad decisions." She gestured to the letter still folded in her coat pocket, the one that had driven her into the storm in the first place. Leaving a man to freeze seemed like a worse one. Silence fell, broken only by the storm's relentless assault. Cale's gaze drifted to the window, where frost feathered the glass in delicate, deadly patterns. His fingers tightened around the mug. "They'll come for me," he said at last. "And they'll find you." Alara's stomach twisted. "Let them. This cabin's warded." His head snapped toward her. Warded? She regretted the word instantly. Her mother's teachings, salt lines, iron nails, runes carved into the threshold, were private, sacred. But Cale's eyes narrowed, sharp as a blade. "You know the old ways," he murmured. "Who was your mother?" "None of your business." She turned away, busying herself with stacking firewood that didn't need stacking. Her pulse thrummed in her ears. "You're safe until morning. Then you leave." Cale set the mug aside. The cot groaned as he stood, swaying slightly but refusing her offered hand. He was tall, taller than she'd realized, his shadow swallowing the firelight. Blood had crusted along the edges of his bandage, but the skin beneath was smooth, unmarred. "I owe you a debt," he said. "Blood for blood. I don't want your debt." The words came out sharper than intended. "I want you gone before whatever's hunting you brings it to my door." He stepped closer. Too close. The heat radiating from him chased the chill from her skin, and she hated how her body leaned into it without permission. "You think you can outrun this?" His voice dropped, velvet over steel. "The storm didn't bring me to you by chance, Alara Voss." Her name in his mouth sounded like a claim. She stepped back, bumping into the table. Don't what?" He didn't move, but the air between them thickened, charged. "Speak the truth? You feel it too. The pull. I feel cold," she lied, "and tired. And you're bleeding through my only clean bandage." A low chuckle escaped him, dark and knowing, stubborn. "Get used to it." She turned away, yanking open a drawer to find fresh gauze. Her hands trembled as she unwrapped the old bandage, revealing skin that should have been shredded but was whole, save for faint silver lines like old scars. Cale watched her work, silent, his breath warm against her cheek. "You've done this before," he said softly. "Cleaned up after monsters?" She taped the new bandage in place, avoiding his eyes. "More than you'd think," a pause. Then, "I'm not a monster. You're something." She stepped back, wiping her hands on her jeans. "And something's coming. I heard them circling." Cale's expression darkened. He moved to the window, peering through the frost. His reflection stared back, gaunt, fierce, inhumanly beautiful. "They won't cross the wards. Not tonight, but tomorrow. Tomorrow I'll be gone." He turned to her, something unreadable in his eyes. "And you'll forget I was ever here." Ilara laughed, sharp and brittle. "I don't forget easily." "No," he murmured. "I don't think you do." The fire popped, sending sparks up the chimney. Outside, the wind shifted, carrying a new sound, a low, mournful howl that raised gooseflesh on her arms. Cale stiffened, his hand drifting to the pendant at his throat. Ilara's heart thudded. "What aren't you telling me?" He didn't answer, just stared into the flames, jaw clenched, the weight of secrets pressing down on them both. In the silence, the storm raged on, and something ancient stirred in the dark beyond the wards. Chapter 3. Salt lines and silver scars, the fire had burned low, a sullen red eye in the hearth. Ilara sat cross-legged on the rug, knees drawn to her chest, watching the last log collapse into ember. Cale had taken the single chair, her grandfather's old rocker, his long legs stretched toward the heat, head tipped back against the worn wood. He hadn't spoken in over an hour. Neither had she. The silence between them wasn't empty. It thrummed like a live wire, humming with things unsaid. Outside, the storm had settled into a steady, malevolent hiss. Snow piled against the door, sealing them in. The wards held. Ilara could feel them, a faint pressure behind her eyes, like the cabin itself was breathing. Her mother's runes glowed faintly along the threshold, silver threads in the dark. Safe. For now. She risked a glance at Kyle. His eyes were closed, but the tension in his shoulders said he wasn't asleep. The pendant at his throat caught the dying light, the black stone veined with silver that looked almost liquid. Every so often his fingers brushed it, unconscious, reverent. A habit. A talisman. Ilara's own fingers itched for the letter in her coat pocket. She hadn't read it since fleeing Blackthorn Hollow. Didn't need to. The words were branded into her skull. "You cannot run from blood, Ilara. The hollow claims its own. Return before the moon wanes, or the tithe will be taken in flesh." She shivered, though the fire still gave off heat. Cale's eyes opened, gray again, the gold banked but not gone. He watched her with that unnerving stillness, like a wolf deciding whether to pounce or wait. "You're cold," he said. "Not a question. I'm fine." She hugged her knees tighter. "You should sleep. You lost a lot of blood." "I don't sleep." He shifted, the rocker creaking. "Not well. Not anymore." The admission hung between them, small and sharp. Ilara swallowed. "Nightmares?" "Memories." His voice was rough, scraped raw. "They're worse." She wanted to ask what memories. Wanted to demand why he'd been bleeding in her ravine, why wolves with eyes like dying stars hunted him. But the words stuck. Instead, she stood, crossing to the small shelf above the sink. Her fingers closed around a tin of salt, coarse, gray, mined from the cliffs beyond the hollow. She cracked it open, the scent sharp and clean. Cale's gaze tracked her. Reinforcing the wards? Insurance. She poured a thin line along the windowsill, the grains hissing as they settled. "My mother taught me. Salt for intent, iron for strength, blood for binding." His brows lifted. "You know the old tongue. I know enough." She moved to the door, repeating the ritual. The salt glowed faintly where it touched the runes, her mother's work, strengthened by her own will. "You didn't answer my question earlier. Who was she to you?" Cale's jaw flexed. "No one. Liar. The word slipped out before she could stop it. She turned, salt tin still in hand. You recognize the runes. The pendant. You know the Hollow's laws. Don't pretend otherwise. He stood, slow and deliberate, the rocker groaning in relief. The space between them shrank to nothing. He towered over her but didn't crowd. Just stood close enough that she could smell pine and blood and something wild beneath. His hand rose, hesitating, then brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. The touch was feather-light, but it burned. Your mother was Lysandra Voss, he said quietly, bloodbound to the old pack, exiled for teaching humans the craft. Alara's breath caught. How do you... I was there. His thumb lingered against her skin, tracing the line of her jaw. When they dragged her to the circle, when they burned the mark from her arm, I was 12, you were 7 maybe, hiding in the roots of the yew tree. The world tilted. Alara stepped back, the salt tin clattering to the floor, grains scattered like stars. You're lying? I wish I were. His hand fell to his side, fingers curling into a fist. I remember your eyes, wide, terrified. You clutched a rag doll with one button eye. She remembered too. The smoke, the screams. Her mother's voice, steady even as the iron seared her flesh. Run, little star. Don't look back. Alara had run, had hidden in the yews roots until dawn. Until the enforcers left and her mother was gone. You were Pack, she whispered. One of them. No. The word cracked like a whip. I was a pup, powerless. My father... He stopped, throat working. It doesn't matter. I failed her. I won't fail you. Alara laughed, a broken sound. You don't even know me. I know you dragged a bleeding stranger through a blizzard. He stepped closer, voice dropping. I know you stitched wounds that should have killed me. I know you're running from something that scares you more than I do. Her eyes burned. Stop! I know the mark on your wrist. His gaze dropped to her left hand, where the sleeve had ridden up. A faint scar circled her wrist like a bracelet, pale, raised, shaped like a crescent moon. The tithe brand. They marked you at birth. Alara yanked her sleeve down. Don't. Cale's expression softened, something raw and aching in his eyes. I'm sorry, the apology undid her. She turned away, pressing her palms to the counter to steady herself. The cabin felt too small, the air too thick. She wanted to scream, to shove him out into the snow and bolt the door, to demand answers he wouldn't give. Instead, she asked, Why were they hunting you? A long pause. Then, because I took something that wasn't mine to take. What? He didn't answer, just moved to the window, peering through the frost. His reflection stared back, haunted, hunted. The pendant. It's a key to a door that should stay locked. Alara's stomach twisted. What kind of door? The kind that lets monsters out. He turned to her, eyes glowing faintly gold. The kind your mother died trying to seal. The words hit like a fist. Alara sank to the floor, back against the cabinets. The salt crunched beneath her. Cale crouched in front of her, close enough that she could see the flecks of amber in his irises, the faint scar bisecting his left brow. I'm not your enemy, Alara, he said again, softer, but I'm not your savior either. When they come, and they will, you need to choose. The Hollow, or me. I don't even know what you are. A ghost of a smile. I'm what happens when the moon chooses wrong. Outside, the wind shifted. A new sound cut through the storm, paws on snow, deliberate and heavy. Cal stiffened, head tilting. His nostrils flared. They're here, he murmured. Alara's heart lurched. She scrambled to her feet, grabbing the iron poker from the hearth. The wards it will hold, for now. He moved to the door, pressing his palm to the wood. The runes flared, bright as moonlight. But they're not alone. Who? His eyes met hers, ancient and grieving. The Alpha King, my brother. The poker slipped from her fingers, clattering to the floor. Cale's hand closed around her wrist, not tight, but unbreakable. His skin burned against the tithe mark, and for a heartbeat, the scar pulsed in time with his pendant. Listen to me, he said, voice urgent. Whatever happens, don't break the salt line. Don't open the door. Not for anyone. And you? I'll handle it. He released her, stepping back. The air around him shimmered, heat rippling like a mirage. Stay inside. Before she could protest, he was gone. Door unbolted, storm swallowing him whole. The wards flared again, then settled. Alara stood frozen, the echo of his touch searing her skin. Outside, a roar split the night. Not wolf, not man, but something in between. The cabin trembled. The fire guttered, and in the silence that followed, Alara heard her mother's voice, faint as a whisper on the wind. Blood calls to blood, little star. Choose wisely. Chapter 4. The mark between us. The door had barely shut behind Kyle when the first impact hit it, like a battering ram of flesh and fury. The wood groaned, runes flaring white-hot. Alara stumbled back, heart slamming against her ribs. A second blow followed, then a third, each one shaking dust from the rafters. The iron poker lay where it had fallen. She snatched it up, gripping it like a spear. Outside, the storm had gone eerily quiet. No wind, no sleet, just the low, guttural snarl of something massive circling the cabin. The wards pulsed, a heartbeat of light against the dark. Alara's mouth tasted of copper. She'd bitten her tongue without realizing. "Kyle!" she shouted, though she knew he couldn't hear, or wouldn't answer. A shadow passed the window. Too tall. Too broad. Claws scraped along the logs, deliberate, savoring. The sound crawled under her skin. She pressed her back to the wall beside the door, poker raised. The tithe mark on her wrist burned. A brand waking from sleep. She hadn't felt it in years. Not since the night her mother vanished. Another shadow. This one paused, sniffing at the salt line. A low whine, almost human. Then silence. Alara's breath came in shallow bursts. She forced herself to move, creeping to the window. Frost obscured the glass, but she could make out shapes. 3, maybe 4 wolves, their coats silvered by moonlight. And in the center a man, naked to the waist, skin gleaming with snow and blood. Kael. He stood between the cabin and the pack, arms loose at his sides, head bowed. The largest wolf, a brute with a scar bisecting its muzzle, circled him, hackles raised. Kael didn't flinch, didn't speak, just waited. The scarred wolf lunged. Alara's scream lodged in her throat. Kael moved like liquid shadow, sidestepping, catching the beast by the scruff and hurling it into a snowbank. The impact sent powder exploding upward. The other wolves surged forward, a blur of teeth and muscle. Kael met them. Fists, elbows, knees, every strike precise, brutal. Bone cracked. Blood steamed in the cold. But there were too many. One wolf leapt high, jaws snapping for Kael's throat. He twisted, taking the bite on his shoulder instead. The beast clamped down, shaking its head. Kael roared, a sound that rattled the cabin's windows, and drove his elbow into the wolf's skull. It dropped, whimpering. Alara's knuckles whitened around the poker. She should stay inside, should trust the wards. But the sight of Kael bleeding again, surrounded, unraveling something inside her. She yanked the door open a crack, salt crunching under her boot. "Kael!" He whirled, eyes blazing gold. "Inside!" The scarred wolf used the distraction. It barreled into Kael's side, driving him to his knees. Teeth flashed. Kael's pendant tore free, skittering across the snow. The black stone pulsed once, bright, frantic, then went dark. Something shifted in the air. A pressure, like the world inhaling. The wolves froze. Even the scarred one released Kael, backing away with a whine. Kael stayed on his knees, chest heaving, blood dripping from his shoulder to stain the snow crimson. From the tree line emerged a new figure. Tall, broader than Kael. Hair the color of midnight, braided tight against his skull. His eyes were the same storm gray but colder, glacier ice over a void. He wore nothing but leather pants, snow melting against his skin as if the cold feared him. A torque of blackened silver circled his throat, etched with the same crescent moon branded on Alara's wrist, the Alpha King. He didn't look at the wolves. Didn't acknowledge the blood or the broken bodies. His gaze locked on Kael, then flicked to the open door. "To Alara. Well," he said, voice smooth as obsidian. "The prodigal returns, and with a Voss no less." Alara's blood turned to sleet. She stepped fully into the doorway, poker raised. "Stay back." The Alpha's smile was a blade. Brave, foolish like her mother. Kyle surged to his feet, planting himself between them. "Leave her out of this, Rowan." "Can't." Rowan's tone was almost gentle. She wears the tithe. She's pack business now. She's under my protection. Rowan's laugh was low, amused. You have no pack, brother, no claim. You forfeited that when you stole the key. Cale's hands clenched. I took what was mine by right. Yours? Rowan stepped closer, boots crunching. The moon chose me. The throne. The mate. The heir? His gaze slid to Alara again, lingering on the mark. But you always did want what wasn't yours. Ilara's stomach lurched. Mate. The word hit like a stone. She looked at Cale, at the blood, the pendant lying dark in the snow, the way his shoulders curved protectively toward her even now. Cale, she said, voice trembling. What is he talking about? Rowan answered for him. He didn't tell you? The key opens the vault of first blood. Inside lies the Omega, the last of the pure line, the one who can breed an heir strong enough to hold the throne against the coming war. He tilted his head. And you, little Voss, carry her scent. Alara's knees buckled. She caught the doorframe. That's not... It is. Rowan's eyes glowed faintly. Your mother hid you. Sealed the bond with her own blood. But seals break. And blood calls to blood, Cale snarled, the sound vibrating through the snow. She's not yours to claim. She's not yours to keep. Rowan gestured, and the wolves closed in, not attacking, just encircling. Bring the Omega to me, Cale. Fulfill the tithe. Or I take her by force. Alara's vision tunneled. The poker slipped from her fingers. She'd run from the hollow to escape this. Arranged bonds, blood debts, the suffocating weight of legacy. And now it stood in her doorway, wearing Cale's face but none of his warmth. Cale turned to her, eyes wild. Alara, listen. No. The word tore from her throat. You knew. All this time you knew what I was. I suspected. His voice cracked. But I didn't... Don't. She backed into the cabin, salt scattering. You used me. The storm, the ravine, none of it was chance. It was fate, he said desperately. I felt you the moment I crossed the border. The pull... Stop. Tears burned her eyes. Just stop. Rowan watched them, expression unreadable. Touching. But time's up. He raised a hand. The wolves lunged. Cale met them halfway, shifting mid-leap, bones cracking, fur exploding across his skin. A massive black wolf, larger than the others, eyes blazing gold, he tore into the pack with a ferocity that stole Alara's breath. Blood sprayed. Howls turned to yelps. Rowan didn't move. Just watched, arms crossed, as his brother fought alone. Alara's hand found the pendant in the snow, Cale's, torn free in the chaos. It was warm, pulsing faintly. She closed her fist around it. The stone flared, and for a heartbeat she saw, flashes of memory not her own. A boy with Cale's eyes watching her mother burn, a throne of bone. A woman with silver hair, belly swollen with child, whispering, protect her as blood pooled beneath her. The vision shattered as Cale, Wolf Cale, slammed into Rowan. The alpha shifted too, midnight fur against black, and the two collided in a blur of teeth and claws. The ground trembled. Snow churned to red slush. Alara backed into the cabin, slamming the door. She threw the bolt, pressed her forehead to the wood. Her wrist burned where the tithe mark glowed, bright, insistent. The pendant in her hand pulsed in time. Outside, the fight raged. Inside, the wards flickered, strained by the magic spilling across the clearing. Alara slid to the floor, clutching the pendant to her chest. Tears streaked her face, but her voice was steady when she whispered to the empty room, I'm done running. The storm answered with a roar that shook the cabin to its bones. And in the dark, the Omega stirred. Chapter 5. The Omega's Pulse. The cabin shuddered as if the forest itself had taken a breath and held it. Alara knelt on the salt-strewn floor. Cale's pendant clenched so tightly the stone's edges bit into her palm. Each pulse from the black heart of it matched the throb in her wrist, the tithe mark now a living coal beneath her skin. Outside, the clash of titans, two brothers tearing at blood and birthright, sent tremors through the logs. She could feel every impact in her bones. A wolf screamed. Another answered with a gurgling cough. Then silence, sudden and absolute. broken only by the low, wet sound of snow settling over fresh wounds. Ilara's lungs burned. She hadn't realized she'd stopped breathing. The door handle rattled. Slow, deliberate. Not a battering ram this time, a knock. 3 measured taps, civilized as a neighbor borrowing sugar. Ilara. Rowan's voice, velvet over broken glass. Open the door. Let's not make this harder than it needs to be. She rose on shaking legs, the poker forgotten. The pendant's heat spread up her arm. A second heartbeat. She pressed it to her sternum and felt. Cale still alive, a golden thread tugging at the edge of her awareness. Not dead, not yet, last chance, Rowan called. The key for the girl. Simple trade, the key, the pendant, the vault, the Omega. Her mother's voice ghosted through her. They will use you to open what should stay shut, little star. Guard the lock with your life, Ilara looked at the salt line. 1 step would break it, 1 step would let him in. She stepped back. Rowan sighed, theatrical. Stubborn, like Lysandra. The handle rattled again, harder. Cale's bleeding out, you know. Won't last another minute without the key. You want his death on your conscience? The thread inside her yanked, sharp, desperate. Cale's pain, raw and animal, flooded her. Ribs cracked, lung pierced, blood filling his mouth. She staggered, catching the table's edge. The pendant flared, white hot. No, she didn't know if the denial was for Rowan or for the bond trying to drag her under. Both, maybe. Tick-tock, Rowan sang. Ilara scanned the cabin, her mother's grimoire on the shelf, iron nails in the drawer, the small vial of nightshade oil she'd never had the courage to use. Her gaze snagged on the hearth. The fire had burned to coals, but beneath the ash lay the iron brand her grandfather once used to mark livestock. A crescent moon, twin to the scar on her wrist. An idea sparked, reckless and bright. She lunged for the brand, thrusting it into the coals. The iron hissed. While it heated, she tore a strip from the hem of her shirt, wrapping it around her hand. The grimoire fell open at her frantic flip. Page 47, Binding of Blood and Will. Her mother's cramped handwriting. Only the marked may seal what the marked once opened. Rowan kicked the door. Wood splintered around the bolt. Another kick and it would give. Ilara yanked the brand free, the crescent glowing cherry red. She didn't hesitate. Pressing the pendant to her tithe mark, she laid the iron over both, stone, scar, flesh. The pain was immediate, exquisite. A scream tore from her throat, echoing into the rafters. The scent of burning skin filled the room. The pendant fused to her wrist, silver veins spreading like roots, anchoring the stone over the crescent brand. Light exploded, white, blinding, pouring from the wound, from her eyes, from every crack in the cabin walls. Outside, Rowan roared in fury. The door exploded inward, shards flying. He stood silhouetted against the storm, midnight wolf at his side, but the light slammed into him like a physical force. He shielded his eyes, stumbling back. Ilara rose, cradling her seared arm. The pendant was no longer a pendant. It was part of her. A black moon embedded in her skin, pulsing with her heartbeat. Power thrummed through her veins, ancient and angry. The Omega's power, waking at last. You will not take him, she said, and her voice carried the weight of every Voss woman who'd ever bled for this forest. Rowan snarled, shifting mid-stride, massive. Black as his brother, but larger, crueler. He lunged. Ilara raised her unmarked hand. The salt on the floor rose in a spiral, forming a shimmering wall between them. Rowan crashed into it and rebounded, fur singed, eyes wide with shock. The bond yanked again, Cale, calling her name without words. She turned toward the shattered door. Snow swirled in, but beyond it, a shape limped through the carnage. The black wolf, one foreleg dragging, gold eyes fixed on her. Blood matted his fur, but he was alive. Rowan recovered, circling. You think a parlor trick stops me? The vault needs blood, girl. Yours or his? Then take mine. Ilara stepped over the threshold, salt crunching beneath her boots. The cold didn't touch her. The Omega's fire burned too hot, but you'll have to go through me to get it. Kyle reached her side, collapsing to his knees in human form, naked, shivering, but whole. The shift had knit his worst wounds, though blood still trickled from a gash above his eye. He stared at her wrist, at the fused pendant, horror and awe warring on his face. Alara, no, quiet. She knelt, pressing her forehead to his. The bond hummed between them, no longer a thread but a river. She felt his guilt, his terror, the love he hadn't dared name. "You're not dying tonight," Rowan laughed, circling closer. "Sweet, but the moon wanes in 3 days. The vault opens at the solstice. You can't hide her forever." "I'm not hiding," Alara said. She stood, helping Kyle to his feet. His arm slung over her shoulders, heavy but steady. "I'm choosing." Rowan's eyes narrowed. "Choosing what?" Alara looked at Kyle, at the scars, the exhaustion, the fierce devotion shining through the pain. Then at Rowan, at the cold ambition carved into every line of him. "I choose the lock," she said. "Not the key." She slammed her branded wrist to the ground. The shockwave rippled outward, salt and snow and raw power. The wards flared, expanding, engulfing the clearing in a dome of white light. Rowan shouted, lunging again. But the barrier solidified, locking him out. Inside the dome, the remaining wolves whimpered and fled. Rowan pounded once, twice, then stepped back, teeth bared in a smile that wasn't a smile. "Enjoy your reprieve, Omega," he called. "I'll be waiting when the moon calls you home." The light faded. The dome settled into a faint shimmer, a new ward stronger than salt or iron. Alara sagged, the power drain leaving her hollow. Cale caught her before she fell, his arms trembling but unbreakable. "You fused it," he whispered against her hair. "The key and the tithe. You're the lock now." "And you're the fool who thought he could outrun fate," she murmured, but there was no heat in it, only exhaustion, and something softer. He pulled back, searching her face. "Why?" "Because I'm tired of being prey." She touched the new scar, the stone warm beneath her fingers. "And because you looked at me like I was more than a debt." Cale's eyes glistened, tears or melting snow, she couldn't tell. He pressed his lips to her branded wrist, a vow and a benediction. "I'll stand with you, whatever comes." Outside the ward, Rowan's howl rose, furious, promising retribution. But inside, the storm had quieted to a gentle fall, flakes drifting through the broken door like ash. Alara leaned into Cale, letting him take her weight. The bond settled, no longer a yank but a tether, chosen, not forced. 3 days until the solstice. 3 days to learn what it meant to be the lock, and 3 days to decide if she'd open the door or burn the vault to the ground. Chapter 6. The Quiet. Between howls, snow sifted through the splintered door frame, settling on the floorboards like a shroud. The new ward shimmered faintly, a dome of pale fire that turned the clearing into a snow globe lit from within. Alara's legs gave out the moment the adrenaline ebbed. Cale caught her, lowering them both to the rug in a tangle of limbs and trembling breath. The fused pendant, now a black crescent embedded in her wrist, pulsed once, then settled into a steady, reassuring thrum. Cale's hands shook as he cupped her face. "Let me see." She lifted her arm. The burn was angry, blistered, but the stone sat flush against the tithe scar, silver veins threading beneath her skin like roots. No blood, no pain now, just a dull ache and the strange certainty that the pendant had always belonged there. "You branded yourself," he whispered, voice raw. "For me. For us," she corrected, the word surprising them both. "Rowan won't stop. I needed leverage." His laugh was broken. "You turned yourself into the lock. That's not leverage, Alara. That's a death sentence. Only if he kills me before I kill him." She meant it as a joke. It didn't land. Cale's thumb brushed the edge of the stone, reverent. "The vault responds to blood and will. You've bound it to yours. He can't open it without you now." "Good." She leaned her forehead against his. "Then we have time." 3 days. His breath hitched. 3 days until the solstice moon. Then every pack within 1,000 miles will feel the call. Alara closed her eyes. The bond between them was quieter now. Not the frantic yank of earlier, but a low, steady current. She could sense him. Exhaustion, guilt, a fierce protectiveness that made her chest ache. And beneath it, something warmer. Older. The first stirrings of the mate bond her mother had warned her about. When the moon chooses, little star, it does not ask permission. She pulled back, meeting his gaze. Tell me the rest. No more half-truths, Cale swallowed. Where do you want me to start? The vault, the Omega. Why Rowan thinks I'm her. He exhaled, slow and shaky, then shifted to sit against the cot, pulling her with him. She settled between his knees, back to his chest, his arms a loose circle around her waist. The position felt natural, dangerous. The Vault of First Blood was built before the pack split. He began, voice low, a sanctuary for the purest line, the Omegas who could birth alphas strong enough to hold the wild magic in check. When the curse came, curse? He nodded against her hair. 1,000 years ago, a human king tried to bind the moon. It backfired. Shifters were born, strong, immortal, but tied to the lunar cycle. The wild magic twisted. Omegas became rare, prized, hunted. The vault was sealed to protect the last one. Alara's throat tightened. My mother. Lysandra was the vault's guardian. She hid the Omega, hid you, when the packs turned on each other. Rowan's father wanted an heir. Mine wanted power. They burned the sanctuary. Lysandra escaped with you in her belly. The pieces clicked. The tithe brand. The exile. The way her mother had flinched at every full moon. And the key? She asked. Cale's fingers found the stone in her wrist. The pendant was forged from the first Omega's blood. It opens the vault, but only if the lock wills it. Meaning me. Meaning you. His arms tightened. Rowan needs an heir to secure his throne before the wild magic breaks free. Without an Omega, his line dies with him. With you, he rules forever. Alara shivered. And you? I was supposed to bring you to him. The confession was a blade between them. Before I understood what the bond meant. Before I met you. She turned in his arms, searching his face. You were sent to kidnap me. I was sent to retrieve the key. His eyes were steady. I found you instead. The distinction should have enraged her. Instead, it cracked something open in her chest. She pressed her palm to his cheek, feeling the stubble, the faint scar. Why didn't you? Because the moment I saw you in that ravine, bleeding for a stranger, I knew. His voice dropped. The moon didn't choose wrong, Alara. It chose you. Her breath caught. The bond flared, golden and warm. She leaned in, lips brushing his. Not a kiss, not yet, but a promise. He tasted of blood and pine and desperation. Outside, the ward hummed, a lullaby of power. Inside, the fire had gone cold, but neither moved to stoke it. They stayed tangled on the rug, sharing breath, sharing silence. Eventually, Cale spoke again. There's more. The wild magic, it's waking. The solstice will crack the veil. If Rowan opens the vault with force, it spills out. Consumes everything. Human, shifter, forest. Alara's stomach twisted. And if I open it willingly? Then you control it, bind it, or destroy it. He hesitated. But the cost? Tell me. Your life. The words fell like stones. The lock and the key become one. You'd burn out channeling the magic, like Lysandra did, holding the sanctuary door. Alara closed her eyes. Her mother's final scream echoed in her memory. Run, little star. I won't let that happen, Cale said fiercely. There's another way. Has to be. She wanted to believe him, wanted to cling to the fragile hope blooming between them. But the pendant pulsed, a reminder of the clock ticking down. Cale, she whispered. When you shifted, your wolf. It's black. Like Rowan's, he tensed. We share a sire, different mothers. Rowan's was the alpha's true mate. Mine was... He trailed off. A Voss, she finished. The realization hit like frostbite. Your mother was Pack. Exiled with mine, he nodded. She died birthing me. Rowan's father blamed her for diluting the line. I was a mistake. A spare. Alara turned fully, straddling his lap to see his face. You're not a mistake. His hands settled on her hips, grounding. I've spent my life proving I'm not. Running, fighting, trying to outrun the moon's joke. His laugh was bitter. Then I found you, and the joke became a gift. She kissed him then, slow, deliberate, pouring every unspoken thing into it. He groaned, fingers digging into her waist, but let her set the pace. When they broke apart, foreheads touching, she whispered, "We'll write a new punchline." Kyle's smile was small, real. Together? Together. They rose eventually, moving in tandem to board up the door with scavenged planks and iron nails. The ward held, but the cold crept in. Alara found blankets, draped one around Kyle's shoulders. He watched her with something like wonder. "You're shaking," he said. "Adrenaline crash." She tried to laugh. It came out shaky. And maybe terror. He pulled her against his chest, chin resting on her head. "I've got you," she believed him. God help her, she did. As dawn bled gray through the cracks, the ward flickered. A distant howl rose, not Rowan's, but older, deeper. The forest itself waking. Cale stiffened. "The veil's thinning already. We need to move. Where?" "The Standing Stones. Your mother's circle. If anywhere holds answers, it's there." Alara nodded, gathering the grimoire, a knife, the nightshade vial. She paused at the door, looking back at the cabin. Her sanctuary, now a battlefield. Cale took her hand, lacing their fingers. The pendant pulsed between their joined wrists, a shared heartbeat. 3 days, he said. 3 days, she echoed. They stepped into the snow, the ward parting like curtains. The forest waited, silent, watchful, ancient, and somewhere in its heart, the vault stirred. Hungry for the lock it had lost. Word count, 153 once now. Generate next chapter of the story, ensuring smooth continuity from the previous section. Continue the slow emotional build-up, deepen the bond between characters, and maintain suspense about the shifter's identity or secret. Keep the word count consistent and naturally lead into the next section. Write. 1000 word chapter 7. The circle beneath the snowy. Forest swallowed them whole. Alara trudged through knee-deep drifts, Cale's hand a steady anchor at her elbow. The ward had sealed behind them with a soft sigh, leaving the cabin a dark silhouette against the rising sun. Snow muffled every sound but their breathing and the crunch of boots on ice. The Standing Stones lay 3 miles north, hidden in a hollow her mother had called the heart vein. Alara hadn't been there since she was 9, since the night Lysandra pressed a kiss to her forehead and whispered, "If I don't come back, find the circle. It will remember you." She hadn't understood then. She did now. Cale moved like he belonged to the woods, silent, fluid, eyes scanning every shadow. The gash above his brow had scabbed over, but blood still crusted his hair. He'd refused the blanket. Shifter heat kept him warm, he said. Alara's teeth chattered despite the wool coat and the bond's low, constant burn in her veins. "You're limping," she said. "Old injury. Acts up in cold." He didn't elaborate. She didn't press. The bond hummed between them, a golden thread stretched taut. She felt his vigilance, his guilt, the fierce need to keep her safe. It was overwhelming and comforting at once. She squeezed his fingers. "Tell me about the circle." Cale's breath fogged the air. 13 stones, each carved with a moon phase. Center altar, bloodstone. Your mother renewed the bindings there every solstice. Kept the veil stitched, until they took her. He nodded. Rowan's father wanted the Omega. Lysandra refused to give you up. The circle was her last stand. Alara's throat tightened. She pictured her mother. Small, fierce, silver hair braided tight, facing down an alpha and his enforcers. Alone. She wasn't alone, Cale said quietly, reading her through the bond. "I was there, hidden. I watched her bleed the circle dry to buy you time." The image cracked something open in Alara's chest. She stopped, snow swirling around her boots. "You were a child, old enough to hate, young enough to be useless." His voice was rough. "I swore I'd find you, protect you. Took me 20 years to track the key." She turned to Chapter 7. The circle beneath the snow. The forest swallowed them whole. Alara trudged through knee-deep drifts, Cale's hand a steady anchor at her elbow. The ward had sealed behind them with a soft sigh, leaving the cabin a dark silhouette against the rising sun. Snow muffled every sound but their breathing and the crunch of boots on ice. The Standing Stones lay 3 miles north, hidden in a hollow her mother had called the heart vein. Ilara hadn't been there since she was 9, since the night Lysandra pressed a kiss to her forehead and whispered, "If I don't come back, find the circle. It will remember you." She hadn't understood then. She did now. Cale moved like he belonged to the woods, silent, fluid, eyes scanning every shadow. The gash above his brow had scabbed over, but blood still crusted his hair. He'd refused the blanket. Shifter heat kept him warm, he said. Ilara's teeth chattered despite the wool coat and the bond's low, constant burn in her veins. "You're limping," she said. "Old injury. Acts up in cold." He didn't elaborate. She didn't press. The bond hummed between them, a golden thread stretched taut. She felt his vigilance, his guilt, the fierce need to keep her safe. It was overwhelming and comforting at once. She squeezed his fingers. "Tell me about the circle." Cale's breath fogged the air. 13 stones, each carved with a moon phase. Center altar bloodstone. Your mother renewed the bindings there every solstice. Kept the veil stitched. Until they took her. He nodded. Rowan's father wanted the Omega. Lysandra refused to give you up. The circle was her last stand. Ilara's throat tightened. She pictured her mother. Small, fierce, silver hair braided tight. Facing down an alpha and his enforcers. Alone. She wasn't alone, Cale said quietly, reading her through the bond. I was there, hidden. I watched her bleed the circle dry to buy you time. The image cracked something open in Ilara's chest. She stopped, snow swirling around her boots. You were a child, old enough to hate, young enough to be useless. His voice was rough. I swore I'd find you, protect you. Took me 20 years to track the key. She turned to him, snowflakes catching in her lashes. And when you did, I wasn't ready for you. His smile was crooked, aching. Still not. Ilara rose on her toes, pressing her lips to the corner of his mouth. A chaste kiss, but the bond flared, heat pooling low in her belly. He groaned, hands settling at her waist. We don't have time, she whispered. We'll make time. But he released her, stepping back. Later. The promise hung between them, bright as the ward's light. They crested a ridge and the hollow opened below. A perfect circle of snow, 13 standing stones rising like sentinels. The bloodstone altar lay buried at the center, only a dark hump visible. No footprints, no sign of Rowan's pack. Yet, Ilara's wrist throbbed. The pendant stone pulsed in answer, silver veins glowing faintly beneath her skin. She flexed her fingers, watching the light dance. It knows we're here, Cale murmured. They descended. The stones loomed taller as they approached. Twice Ilara's height, carved faces weathered but unmistakable. Waxing crescent, full moon, one in gibbous, each phase a guardian. Snow had drifted against the bases, but the circle itself was clear, as if the forest refused to trespass. At the center, Ilara knelt, brushing snow from the altar. The bloodstone was warm, impossibly so. Veins of red quartz threaded through black, pulsing like arteries. She pressed her branded wrist to it. Light exploded. The circle ignited, runes flaring along each stone, connecting in a web of silver fire. The snow within the ring melted instantly, revealing packed earth and a ring of charred symbols. Ilara's mother's work. The bond surged, golden and wild, and for a heartbeat she saw, Lysandra kneeling here, blood dripping from her palms, whispering the old tongue as the veil tore behind her. Hold the line, little star. Hold it until she comes, Ilara gasped, jerking back. Cale steadied her. The circle remembers, he said. It's tied to your blood. She nodded, throat tight. It's weakening. I can feel the tear. Cale's gaze sharpened. Where? She pointed east, beyond the stones. There, a seam. Like fabric fraying, he swore under his breath. Rowan's been probing, looking for weaknesses. Ilara stood, brushing dirt from her knees. We reinforce it. Like my mother did. With what? His voice was gentle, but the question cut. She used her life. There's another way. She opened the grimoire, flipping to a page marked with a pressed U leaf. Binding of 2 bloods. A mate bond. Willing, equal. It anchors the circle without sacrifice. Kyle went still. You're suggesting... I'm suggesting we finish what the moon started. She met his eyes, steady despite the tremor in her hands. But only if you want it. He laughed, a broken sound. Elara, I've wanted it since you dragged me out of that ravine. The admission hung between them, raw and real. She stepped closer, the circle's light gilding his face. It's not just ceremony, she warned. It binds us. Body, blood, soul. No undoing it. I don't want to undo it. His hands framed her face. I want you. All of you, even the parts that scare me. The bond flared, golden and fierce. Elara leaned into him, lips finding his. This kiss was different, hungry, claiming. He lifted her onto the altar, the bloodstone warm against her back. Snow fell around them, melting before it touched the circle. Blood, she whispered against his mouth. We need blood. He didn't hesitate. Shifting one finger to a claw, he sliced his palm. Crimson welled, dripping onto the altar. Elara mirrored him, the pendant stone flaring as her blood mingled with his. The circle roared to life, light spiraling upward, weaving their essences into the wards. Pain and pleasure twined. Elara arched, gasping as the bond snapped into place, complete, unbreakable. She felt Cale's heartbeat in her chest, his strength in her bones. His love, fierce and terrifying, flooded her. Mine, the bond sang. Mine. They broke apart, breathing hard. The circle pulsed, stronger now. The tear east of them knitting closed with a sound like distant thunder. Cale rested his forehead against hers. It's done. Not yet. Elara slid from the altar, legs unsteady. Rowan will feel it. He'll come. Let him. Cale's eyes glowed gold, wolf and man in perfect accord. He'll find us ready. They gathered their things, grimoire, knife, vial, and stepped from the circle. The stones dimmed, but the wards held, a silent promise. As they crested the ridge, a howl split the air. Close, furious. Rowan. Cale squeezed her hand. 2 days. 2 days, she echoed. The forest watched them go, ancient and approving. And beneath the snow, the vault waited, patient, hungry, certain of its due. Chapter 8. The Wait of 2 Days. The sun hung low and blood orange, bleeding across the snow as Elara and Cale followed a deer trail deeper into the heart vein. The circle's light had faded behind them, but the bond thrummed, bright, steady, alive. Every step felt lighter, as if the forest itself had exhaled in relief. Yet the air carried a new tension. Rowan's howl still echoed in Alara's bones, a promise and a threat. They needed shelter. The cabin was compromised, the circle too exposed. Cale led her toward an old hunter's blind his mother had shown him decades ago. Half cave, half cabin, carved into a granite cliff. The entrance was hidden by a curtain of frozen vines. He parted them with a shoulder, ushering Elara inside. The space was small, dry, smelling of pine resin and earth. A stone hearth yawned black and cold. A single cot, rotting canvas and rusted frame, leaned against the far wall. Someone had left a tin cup and a cracked mirror, ghosts of previous occupants. Cale dropped their pack, knelt, and coaxed a fire from the dry tinder he'd scavenged. Elara watched the flames catch, casting gold across his sharp cheekbones. The bond let her feel the ache in his ribs, the throb in his shoulder, old wounds flaring with the cold. She knelt beside him, pressing her palm to the worst bruise. You're hurting. Old news. He turned his hand to lace their fingers. You're shaking. Cold, and she swallowed. Everything. He pulled her down beside him, wrapping them both in the single blanket. The fire crackled, throwing shadows that danced like wolves on the walls. Elara leaned into his chest, listening to the double rhythm of their hearts. Hers quick, his slow and steady. Tell me something true, she whispered. Something you've never told anyone. Cale was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, I used to dream of the Omega, before I knew it was you. Silver hair, laugh like wind chimes. She'd stand in the vault and hold out her hand, and I'd reach. But the dream always ended with me on my knees, begging the moon to let me keep her. Alara's throat tightened. And now? Now I'm still on my knees. He brushed a kiss to her temple. But you're real, and you're here. She turned in his arms, straddling his lap to see his face. The firelight painted him in bronze and shadow. Your turn. Ask me. He traced the fused stone in her wrist, reverent. What did you want before the tithe? Before all this? The question caught her off guard. She'd spent years running from the answer. I wanted to be a cartographer, she said softly. Map the world beyond the hollow. Draw coastlines no one had named. My mother taught me to read the stars, but I wanted to chart the seas. Cale's smile was small, wondering. You still can. Not if I burn out holding the veil. His arms tightened. We'll find another way. She wanted to believe him. Instead, she kissed him. Slow, deliberate, tasting smoke and pine and the salt of unshed tears. The bond flared, golden and hungry. Clothes peeled away between kisses. Her coat, his shirt, the blanket pooling at their feet. Skin to skin, the cold vanished. Only heat, his mouth on her throat, her nails scoring his back, the low growl in his chest that wasn't quite human. They didn't rush. Every touch was a vow, every sigh a seal. When he entered her, it was with her name on his lips and her fingers tangled in his hair. The bond sang, bright and fierce, weaving their souls tighter. Pleasure crested in waves, slow and shattering, until they collapsed together, trembling, spent. After, they lay tangled on the cot, the fire burning low. Elara traced the scars across his ribs. Claw marks, bite wounds, a burn shaped like a crescent moon. Rowan? She asked. Some. My father. Training. His voice was drowsy, sated. Alphas don't raise spares gently. She pressed a kiss to the worst scar. You're not a spare, he hummed, nuzzling her hair. Sleep, mate. The word settled warm in her chest. She drifted, lulled by his heartbeat and the crackle of the fire. Dreams came, fractured, vivid. The vault. Doors of black stone veined with silver. A woman with Alara's eyes but silver hair, belly swollen, singing in the old tongue. The lock must choose, or the wild will devour. Then Rowan, standing over a throne of bones, eyes cold as winter. Bring me the Omega, brother, or I take her piece by piece. Elara jolted awake, gasping. Cale was already up, crouched by the fire, adding wood. Dawn bled gray through the vine curtain. Bad dream? He asked. Warning. She sat up, clutching the blanket. The vault. It's dreaming too. It wants me. Cale's jaw tightened. Rowan will use the solstice moon to force the door. We have to be there first, she nodded, dressing quickly. The bond let her feel his resolve, his fear, for her, not himself. It steadied her. They ate what little remained, dried venison, a bruised apple, then stepped into the cold. The forest was silent, watchful. Snow had stopped, but the sky hung heavy, promising more. Half a mile from the blind, Cale froze. His head tilted, nostrils flaring. Trackers, he murmured. 3, not Rowan's. Alara's pulse spiked. Rival pack? Worse. He pulled her behind a fallen log. Bounty hunters. Human. They sell Omegas to the highest bidder. She peered over the log. 3 figures in white camo, rifles slung, moving with military precision. One carried a net gun. Another a collar, iron, etched with binding runes. How do they know? She whispered. Rowan put a price on you. Dead or alive. Kyle's eyes glowed gold. Stay low. He shifted, silent, seamless, Black Wolf emerging from the snow like smoke. Alara's breath caught at the beauty of it, the lethal grace. He melted into the trees. Minutes stretched. Then chaos. A startled shout, the crack of a branch, a rifle shot that splintered bark inches from her head. She ducked, heart hammering. Another shot. A scream cut short. Kyle returned in human form, blood on his knuckles, eyes wild. Gone, for now. Elara stared at the red on his skin. You killed them. 2. 1 ran. He wiped his hands on his jeans. They'll bring more. We can't outrun them forever. We don't have to. He took her face in his hands. We reach the vault. We end this. She nodded, swallowing fear. Together. Together. They moved faster now, the bond guiding them like a compass. By midday, they reached the ridge overlooking the vault's entrance, a cleft in the cliff face, sealed by a door of black stone veined with silver. No handle, no lock, just the crescent moon carved deep, glowing faintly. Alara's wrist burned. The pendant stone pulsed in answer. "It's waiting," she said. Cale's hand found hers. 1 day left. The wind shifted, carrying a new scent, ozone, blood, and the promise of a storm. Rowan was coming, and the moon was rising. Chapter 9. The door. That breathes, the cleft in the cliff exhaled cold. Alara stood before the vault door, snowflakes melting on her cheeks. The black stone drank the pale afternoon light, its silver veins pulsing like capillaries beneath skin. The carved crescent moon glowed brighter with every heartbeat. Hers, Cale's, the mountains. The pendant fused to her wrist answered in kind, a low thrum that vibrated up her arm and into her teeth. Cale's hand settled at the small of her back, grounding. "Feel it?" "Like it's watching." She pressed her branded palm to the door. The stone was warm, fever-warm, and the crescent flared white. A sigh escaped the rock, ancient and hungry. The door didn't open, but it shifted, a hair's breadth, as if testing her weight. 1 day, Cale murmured. "Solstice moon rises at dusk tomorrow. We camp here." They pitched a lean-to against the cliff, using pine boughs and the last of the canvas from the hunter's blind. The fire was small, smokeless, banked low. Alara's breath fogged as she traced runes into the snow around their shelter. Ward, shield, silence. Cale watched, quiet approval in his eyes. "You learned well," he said. "My mother drilled me every new moon." She didn't look up. "I thought it was bedtime stories." He crouched beside her, adding a final sigil. "Mate." The bond flared, golden and warm. She knew you'd need them. Night fell fast. Stars pricked the velvet sky, sharp as broken glass. The moon hung low and swollen, 1 day shy of full. Alara felt its pull in her blood, in the stone, in the slow, deliberate throb between her legs. The bond was restless. Cale's desire mirrored her own, a low simmer neither acknowledged aloud. They ate in silence, the last of the venison, melted snow for tea. When the fire burned to embers, Cale pulled her into the lean-to, wrapping them in the single blanket. The space was tight. Their bodies fit like puzzle pieces. "Sleep," he said against her ear. "I'll keep watch. You need rest too." She turned in his arms, nose brushing his throat. "We face Rowan tomorrow." His laugh was soft, bitter. "Rowan's the least of it. The wild magic will test us both." She traced the scar over his heart, crescent-shaped like hers. "Tell me the worst thing you've done," he went still. "You don't want—" "I do." She needed the truth, ugly and all. "We're bound, Kyle. No secrets left." A long breath. "I killed my first mate." The words hung heavy. Alara didn't flinch. "She was human," he continued, voice raw. "Rowan's father ordered me to turn her. Proof I was loyal." I refused. He held her down. I shifted to stop him. Lost control. When I came back, she was... He swallowed. "I buried her under the yew tree. The one you hid in." Alara's eyes burned. She pressed her lips to the scar. "You were a boy. Old enough to know better?" His arms tightened. "I swore I'd never bind another. Then you dragged me from the snow, and the moon laughed." She kissed him, slow, deliberate, tasting grief and forgiveness. The bond flared, golden and fierce. Clothes fell away between kisses. Her sweater, his shirt, the blanket pooling at their feet. Skin to skin, the cold vanished. Only heat, his mouth on her collarbone, her nails scoring his shoulders, the low growl that meant mine. They moved together, unhurried. Every touch was a vow, every gasp a seal. When release came, it was quiet, shattering, their names tangled on each other's lips. After, they lay entwined, the bond a steady glow between their hearts. "Sleep now," Kyle whispered. "I've got you." She drifted, lulled by his heartbeat and the mountain's low hum. Dreams came, vivid, urgent. The vault door open, silver light spilling out. A woman with Alara's face but silver hair, cradling a child with Cale's eyes. "The lock must choose," she sang. or the wild will devour. Then Rowan, standing in the circle, blood on his hands. Bring me the heir, brother, or I take her heart. Alara woke gasping. Cale was already up, crouched at the lean-to's entrance, eyes glowing gold. Dawn bled pale across the snow. Trackers? She asked. Worse, he pointed. Tracks circled their shelter. Wolf, but wrong. Too large, claws dragging. Skinwalkers. Rowan sending the cursed. Alara's stomach dropped. Skinwalkers. Shifters who'd traded their humanity for power. Mindless. Relentless. How many? 4, maybe 5. He handed her the knife. The door's waking. It'll open at moonrise. We hold until then. They broke camp fast, retreating to the cleft. The door loomed, the crescent now blazing. Alara pressed both palms to it. The stone sang, a low, feminine voice in the old tongue. Blood of my blood. Will you enter? Yes, Alara answered aloud. The door shuddered but held. Not yet. The moon must witness. Cale's hand found hers. We buy time. The first skinwalker burst from the trees, half wolf, half man, fur patchy, eyes milk white. It lunged. Kyle met it midair, shifting to wolf in a blur of black fur and teeth. They rolled, snarling, blood spraying snow. Alara backed against the door, knife raised. 2 more emerged, gaunt, twisted, jaws dripping. She slashed as the nearest leapt, opening its throat. Hot blood steamed on her face. The second clamped onto her arm. Pain exploded white hot. She drove the knife into its eye. It screamed, releasing her. Cale dispatched the third, then shifted back, panting. More coming. Alara's arm bled freely, but the pendant stone flared, knitting flesh with silver light. The door's feeding on it, she realized. My blood. Our bond, Cale's eyes widened. Then we give it what it needs. He sliced his palm, pressing it to the crescent. Alara mirrored him, their blood mingling on the stone. The door groaned, shifting another inch. The voice returned, stronger. Soon, a roar split the air. Rowan, midnight wolf, flanked by a dozen enforcers. He shifted to man, naked and furious. Enough games, he snarled. The moon rises. Hand her over. Cale stepped forward, blood dripping. Over my corpse, Rowan smiled. That can be arranged. The enforcers charged. Alara and Cale fought back to back, wolf and woman, blade and claw. Blood painted the snow. The door pulsed with every drop, the crescent now blinding. Alara felt the wild magic stirring, a storm behind the stone. Rowan broke through, shifting mid-leap. He slammed into Cale, jaws snapping for his throat. Alara screamed, driving her knife into Rowan's flank. He roared, rounding on her. The moon crested the ridge, full, swollen, silver. The door opened, light poured out, blinding. The voice thundered, Choose! Alara grabbed Kyle's hand, their blood slick between their palms. Together, they stepped into the light. The vault swallowed them whole, and behind them, Rowan howled, a sound of rage and triumph. Chapter 10. The vault of first blood. The light folded around them like wings. Alara stumbled as the vault's threshold gave way beneath her boots. Not stone, but something softer, warmer, like stepping onto living moss. The door sealed behind them with a sound like a heartbeat, cutting off Rowan's howl mid-note. Silence rushed in, thick and velvet, broken only by their ragged breathing and the low, continuous thrum of the mountain itself. Cale's hand tightened around hers. Stay close. They stood in a cavern vast enough to swallow the hollow hole. Bioluminescent vines draped from the ceiling, pulsing silver and gold. The floor was a mirror of black glass, reflecting the light in fractured rainbows. At the center rose a dais of bloodstone, taller than the altar in the circle, carved with the same crescent moon now blazing on Alara's wrist. The air tasted of ozone and old magic. Every breath drew it deeper into her lungs, into the bond, into the fused stone that beat in time with her pulse. It's beautiful, she whispered. It's waiting, Cale corrected. His voice echoed strangely, as if the cavern listened. They approached the dais. With each step, memories not her own flickered at the edges of her vision. Silver-haired women laughing, children with Cale's eyes chasing fireflies, wolves running beneath a sky split by auroras. The vault's history, or its dream of one. At the dais' base lay a shallow basin filled with liquid starlight. The pendant stone flared, silver veins spreading up Alara's arm like frost. She knelt, drawn by instinct. Cale followed, tension coiling in his shoulders. "Blood and will," he murmured. "That's what opens the heart." Alara dipped her branded wrist into the basin. The liquid was warm, viscous, clinging like honey. Light exploded, white, searing. The bond roared, golden and wild, and the dais split along the crescent, revealing a staircase spiraling down into darkness. The voice returned, not sound, but pressure in her skull. Descend, lock, and key. Choose. Kyle's eyes met hers, steady despite the fear she felt through the bond. Together. They descended. The staircase was carved from the same black glass, each step glowing faintly where their blood had dripped. The air grew warmer, heavier, scented with earth and something metallic. At the bottom, a chamber opened, circular, intimate. In the center stood a cradle of woven silver vines, empty. Above it hung a single moonstone, large as a heart, pulsing with the same rhythm as the pendant. Alara's breath caught. The Omega's cradle. Cale's hand trembled in hers. She was born here, the last pure Omega, your ancestor. The moonstone flared. Images flooded Alara's mind. A woman in labor, silver hair sweat-plastered, singing through pain. A babe lifted to the moon, eyes glowing gold. Then fire, enforcers breaking the wards. The woman's scream as she sealed the vault with her last breath. "To protect the line," the voice whispered. "To protect you," Alara swayed. Cale caught her, arms around her waist. "Easy, it's showing you the binding." She nodded, tears stinging. "She died so I could live. And now you decide if her sacrifice was enough." His voice cracked. "Alara, the wild magic, it's here. I feel it. If we release it wrong, I know." She turned in his arms, pressing her forehead to his. "But we're not them. We choose differently," the moonstone pulsed, impatient. The cradle vines shifted, opening like a flower. At its heart lay a single drop of blood, crimson, perfect, suspended in midair. "The first blood," Cale breathed. "One drop to bind the wild. One drop to break it." Alara's wrist burned. The pendant stone pulled, urging her closer. She stepped forward, Cale's hand still in hers. The drop hovered, waiting. "Blood and will," she echoed. "Ours." She sliced her palm, fresh blood welling alongside the healed scar. Cale mirrored her, their hands joining over the cradle. Their blood mingled, dripping onto the suspended drop. Light erupted. The chamber trembled. The moonstone shattered into 1,000 shards, each becoming a star. The wild magic surged, raw, chaotic, hungry. Alara felt it claw at the bond, at her soul, trying to tear them apart. She clung to Cale, to the golden thread that was them. "Choose!" the voice thundered. "Bind or break." Images flashed. Rowan on a throne of bones, the forest burning, children with empty eyes. Then another, Alara and Cale, older, laughing. A child with silver-streaked hair chasing wolves under a peaceful moon. She met Cale's eyes. Together. Always. They pressed their joined hands to the cradle's heart. The wild magic roared, then folded, compressing, shaping, binding to their will. The blood drop absorbed their offering, glowing brighter, then sank into the vines. The cradle sealed, vines weaving tight, the chamber stilled. The stars dimmed to a gentle glow. The voice returned, softer now. The line is renewed. The wild is leashed, but the door remembers. Alara sagged, exhausted. Cale caught her, lowering them both to the glass floor. The bond hummed. Content. Complete. "We did it," she whispered. "We rewrote it." He kissed her temple, her cheek, her lips. Slow, reverent. "The vault is ours now. Not Rowan's, not the pack's." The staircase reappeared, glowing. They climbed, legs trembling, emerging into the cavern. The dais had sealed, the basin empty. The door stood open a crack, moonlight spilling through. Rowan waited beyond. They stepped out together. The solstice moon hung full in silver, bathing the clearing in cold light. Rowan stood alone, enforcers gone, fled or dead. His eyes were wild, furious. "You opened it," he snarled. You stole my birthright. No, Ilara said, voice steady. We saved it. Kyle stepped forward, wolf and man in harmony. The wild is bound. The Omega line lives. Through us. Through choice. Rowan's gaze flicked to their joined hands, to the faint glow where their blood had mingled. Understanding dawned, then rage. He shifted, midnight wolf, massive, lunging. Kale met him midair. They collided in a blur of fur and fangs, rolling across the snow. Ilara's heart seized, but the bond was calm. Kale was winning. Years of pain, of being the spare, fueled every strike. Rowan faltered. Kale pinned him, jaws at his throat. Yield. Kale growled, voice layered with alpha command. Rowan whimpered, shifting back to man, naked, bleeding, defeated. Brother, the throne is yours, Kale said. But the wild answers to us now. Harm her and you lose everything. Rowan nodded, broken. Kale released him, stepping back to Ilara's side. The forest exhaled. Wolves howled in the distance, not war, but welcome. The packs felt the shift. Ilara leaned into Kyle, exhaustion crashing over her. It's over. It's beginning, he corrected, kissing her softly. Snow began to fall, gentle now. The vault door sealed behind them, a quiet click of finality. They walked into the moonlit clearing, hand in hand, the bond a golden promise between them. And somewhere, in the heart of the mountain, the cradle waited for the next solstice, the next choice, the next love strong enough to hold the wild at bay.